And now on the line is Maria Power. Maria is the Family Support Coordinator with the Western Region Drug and Alcohol Task Force. Maria, welcome to Near FM.
Thanks for having me, Darren.
Maria, I've done 2 interviews on Near FM with 2 of your colleagues in your task force over the last few years, with Neil Wilson and with Emmett Major. But my last interview, which was with Emmett, was over 4 years ago. As has been over 4 years since my last interview with a member of your task force, Maria, can you start off by giving our listeners a reminder, that is for those who don't know, about who the Western Region Drug and Alcohol Task Force are, and then tell me a bit about your job with the task force?
Sure. I suppose the Western Region Drug and Alcohol Task before task forces nationally. And our region covers Galway, Mayo and Roscommon. We've got, I think, the largest geographical area of all the task forces in the country. And we offer a wide range of supports and services. I suppose, and overarching all of that is looking at reducing the harm caused by drug and alcohol misuse. So then looking at our service specifically is working with family members who are impacted by somebody else's substance misuse, whether it's drug or alcohol. Our service supports family members who are over 18. And I suppose when we talk about family, we talk about that term kind of broadly. You know, it can be parents, partners, grandparents, close friends of somebody who is using substances. Other areas of the work that we do within the task force itself, looking at training and capacity building. And we have a training calendar on our website that anybody can log on to and have a look at what we are offering to people within our region, but we also have some people from outside our region attend those as well. And we offer, I suppose as part of that, it's looking at the SARE, the freedom of intervention training, the putting the pieces together, and at the end of this month, actually, I think it's next week, that's starting a new course on effective responses to cocaine use. And so there's also a community addiction studies course as well, happening in April. It's starting. So there's, I suppose, lots of different things happening on the training front. We also offer bursaries to people who are in recovery, so looking at funding to support that person's recovery through a support worker. That's another branch, I suppose, of what we offer. There's also a recovery coordinator looking at supporting recovery within the region. We have Emmett, who you mentioned, who is over the Planet Youth side of things, which is an prevention and early intervention model at reducing substance misuse from a young age. We have Neil as well, who you mentioned, who is also a member of our task force, and Gillian Conway, who provide education and training. So there are kind of lots of different branches, and we also have an addiction counsellor who works with homeless services within Galway City and County. But yes, but there are kind of lots of things happening within the task force. But overall, the aim is to look at reducing the harm caused by substance misuse.
Yeah, sounds like you're a very busy task force. Okay, and you have a webinar coming up with your task force on drug intimidation. This is the main reason I got in touch with you for this interview today. Can you tell me more, Maria, about the issue of drug intimidation in Ireland and how frequently you and your colleagues in your task force come across the issue?
Yeah, I suppose the webinar, firstly starting with the webinar that is happening tomorrow, it's the third one that we have done since October. And I suppose the aim of these webinars is just to increase awareness on drug-related intimidation and letting family members or anyone experiencing it know that there is support out there, that they can come to talk to anybody within our service, or there are also members within An Garda Síochána who can support them as well with this issue. From our service, we would meet a lot of families who are experiencing drug-related intimidation. It's something that family members might not mention when they first meet with us. They might feel that they can't disclose that, or it might not be a safe space. But I suppose through working with them on other areas that they're wanting help support with, that's what they can build that trust with us, and then it might be disclosed that there is current intimidation, or there has been past intimidation. I suppose that fear, they don't want to get their loved one into trouble by disclosing that. We often find that with family members, it might be something that they're currently experiencing, but it might be something that has happened in the past. They might be coming to you for support on other areas, of their life that has been impacted by their loved one's substance misuse. And then by chatting with them, they might say, oh yeah, a few years ago we did hand over money because they had threatened to hurt our loved one. So although, it might not be current, it's there with a lot of families where there is drug use.
Most of these drug dealers, I imagine, are probably very intimidating people, so I can well imagine that families are terrorised because of them,
There was actually a case recently, it was only last week, within our region, where it spoke about, it was in court last week, where there was a fire, or a car was burnt out, and property damage as well to the family home, as a result of a drug debt. And this family had already handed over a quite substantial amount of money, before any of that happened. So it can be really frightening for families.
And this is really kind of a thing as regards, I think someone else from another task force said to me a few years ago in an interview, this is kind of like the evolution of drug dealers, because when I was a teenager 25 years ago, I didn't hear all these stories about drug-related intimidation, you know what I mean? So I believe am I right in saying it's only become an issue like in the last, say, 10, 20 years, because it hasn't always been an issue as big as it isn't it?
I suppose that's a difficult one to call, because it's never something that has been recorded before. It might have been. I suppose there was probably a lot of fear about who do I go to with this. They might have been fearful of going to the Gardaí about it, because if they go to the Gardaí about it, then am I implicating my loved one then? Because they shouldn't be taking drug use. Or they shouldn't be engaging in drug use. And also, what we're finding as well is that the person who is experiencing related intimidation might be enticed to engaging in some activity as a way of reducing their drug debt. So, for example, if there's 2,000 owed, it could be tempted to engage in criminal activity as a way of reducing that drug use, or that drug debt. I mean, that example, if they're told, well, look, we'll reduce it to 1,000 if you go to address A and pick up a bag for us and bring it to address B. It'll be done within an hour. 1,000 less, and they might be tempted to do that, and it might go well the first time, but then they might be encouraged to do that again. But this time, they send a text message, say, did you pick up the bag at such an address? And they reply yes, and then the person might be kind of blackmailed then, well, you can't go to the guards on us because we have this message from you admitting that you went to address A to pick that up for us, so you're part of this now, so now you need to do this for us. So you can see that it can be a really kind of vicious cycle then, that people can get themselves caught up in, where there was initially a drug debt, but now they're dealing with a drug debt and an issue with substance misuse and being involved in criminal activity. So it can be really difficult for people to try and get out of that. And I suppose family members might be aware of that and then think, well, I can't go to the Gardaí with this because my son or my daughter is involved in it all. they're trying to get out of it, but it's really difficult. And what we would encourage those families to do is to talk to the nominated detective inspector in their area about that. So there's one in each county, that family members can talk to about these issues that are going on within families, that they can talk to them in a confidential space. And if they want to go ahead and report that incident or report what is going on, they can, but there won't be any pressure to be put on them to go down that route. But they can have a chat to the drug-related intimidation inspector about that.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you what yourselves and the task force recommend people do. Just a couple more questions, Maria. One point I read in an article in a newspaper only a few months ago is that, for example, 25 years ago when I was a teenager, the illegal drug supply across Ireland back then was controlled by Dublin criminals, whereas now across Ireland there are local and regional big players, drug dealers, like across the country. Is this true, Maria?
I'm not sure of that, to be honest. I suppose what we do know is that illegal drugs are really accessible, even in really remote areas of Ireland. Like within our region, families and people in substance misuse can get themselves caught up in drug-related intimidation, or can no matter where they live. They're just so accessible. I suppose as to who's over that, I wouldn't be 100% sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
People can be really creative in how they target their market and how they follow through with that as well.
Yeah. I think the article I read was talking about hash cannabis, and I think 25, 30 years ago, I can't think of his name, but there was one big drug dealer in particular who controlled the whole country, the supply, whereas nowadays you have people in different parts of the country bringing in their own supply, so it's different, Okay, Maria, can you tell me, if you haven't already told me, a bit more about the webinar you have tomorrow?
Sure. So like I said, this is a webinar that we have done since October, and it's just looking at I suppose what drug-related intimidation is, what it might look like, who can experience it, if somebody is experiencing it, what their options might be. We let people know of the drug-related intimidation reporting program, which I've already mentioned, with each nominated inspector in each county. It's a service that some people don't know is there, but it's a really valuable service to avail of support from. We look at kind of what people experiencing intimidation can feel, how they're impacted, the risks where there is intimidation. We also look at the city of intimidation, how it can be really difficult, a really difficult situation for families and the people experiencing it to be caught up in, and how it can be quite complex. When you talk about criminality and this, I suppose we know that often the victims of drug-related intimidation can often be perpetrators also. They might be experiencing it on one end, but also inflicting that then on somebody else as a result of, or I suppose, an attempt to reduce that debt. And then we look at the options. So if you are experiencing drug-related intimidation, what are my options? Where can I go to? There is kind of an 8-step program in supporting people experiencing drug-related intimidation, and we go through that with anyone attending the webinar as well. And we also mentioned the DRIVE project, so that's the Drug-Related Intimidation and Violence Engagement Project, which is an interagency project with systems and structures to respond to drug-related intimidation and associated violence within Ireland. That's funded by the Department of Health and its drug initiative. I suppose the key objectives of that project is to support victims and to build capacity of communities around Ireland to respond to drug-related intimidation and violence. And I suppose they have a really informative website also, and a leaflet as well to accompany that, and a number that anybody can contact them on. Their website has lots of information and services as well.